People like to say that Prohibition caused the mafia, but the mafia existed before Prohibition, and even after it, they still were able to make a lot of money.
It's true that the mafia existed before Prohibition, but Prohibition created a massive underground market for alcohol that allowed organized crime syndicates like the mafia to thrive. With the demand for alcohol still high, despite it being illegal, the mafia stepped in to meet that demand through bootlegging, speakeasies, and other illicit means. This allowed them to establish networks of distribution and accumulate large amounts of wealth and power. After Prohibition ended, the mafia was able to diversify its operations and move into other illicit markets like gambling, drugs, and labor racketeering. However, Prohibition played a significant role in the growth and expansion of the mafia and other organized crime syndicates in the United States.
The mafia should be looked at as more as a franchise like McDonald's. If you take away one thing, they just increase in another activity they are already doing.
It's true that the mafia has engaged in a variety of illegal activities beyond just the production and distribution of alcohol during Prohibition, such as gambling, drug trafficking, and money laundering. The mafia is a criminal organization that has adapted and evolved over time to continue engaging in profitable illegal activities. While the end of Prohibition may have led to a decline in bootlegging, the mafia was able to shift its focus to other illicit activities to maintain its power and influence.
Prohibition actually seen a reduction in alcohol consumption.
While some studies have suggested that Prohibition led to a reduction in alcohol consumption, there is evidence to suggest that the overall effect was not significant. Prohibition was widely flouted, and many people continued to drink alcohol despite the ban. There was also a rise in organized crime and illegal alcohol production, distribution, and consumption. Some argue that Prohibition actually increased the harms associated with alcohol consumption by driving it underground and making it less regulated and more dangerous. Additionally, the economic costs of enforcing Prohibition were high, and the government lost significant tax revenue as a result of the ban.
But it's hard to do a cause and effect with Prohibition causing the crime. Many Middle East countries have banned alcohol, and they have lower crime rates.
There are a number of factors that can influence crime rates, including economic conditions, cultural attitudes, and government policies. It can be difficult to isolate the effects of any one factor on crime rates, as there are often multiple factors at play. In the case of Prohibition, there is evidence to suggest that the ban on alcohol did contribute to an increase in certain types of crime, such as bootlegging, smuggling, and organized crime. However, it is also possible that other factors, such as the Great Depression and social unrest, also played a role in the rise of crime during that period. Similarly, while some Middle Eastern countries have banned alcohol and have lower crime rates, it is difficult to attribute the lower crime rates solely to the alcohol ban. Other factors, such as cultural norms and government policies, may also contribute to the lower crime rates in those countries.
So, is it possible to have an increase in crime in some categories, but an overall decrease in crime?
Yes, it is possible to have an increase in crime in some categories while still having an overall decrease in crime. This can happen if the increase in one category is offset by a greater decrease in another category. Additionally, different types of crimes may be affected differently by various factors such as changes in laws or policing strategies, economic conditions, or social norms. Therefore, it is important to look at crime statistics in a nuanced and comprehensive way to gain a full understanding of the crime situation in a given area or over a certain time period.
Isn't a better test to see if a ban works is to see who would benefit the most in the ban being lifted or reinforced? If, for example, if banning alcohol caused no protest from alcohol companies, wouldn't that be a sign it doesn't work because they will sell it under the table? The people that opposed Prohibition the most was alcohol companies for obvious reasons. They knew it kept people from buying their products.
While it is true that the alcohol industry was among the most vocal opponents of Prohibition, it is not accurate to say that they opposed it solely because it kept people from buying their products. There were a variety of reasons why many people and industries opposed Prohibition, including concerns about the impact on individual freedom, the difficulty of enforcing the law, and the potential for increased crime and corruption. Additionally, while some people did stop drinking during Prohibition, others continued to do so illegally, and the black market for alcohol created a host of new problems.
But black market concerns are sometimes counterweighted by other considerations. We don't say ending slavery was wrong and we should bring it back because it created black market for slavery.
That is correct. The fact that black markets can arise as a result of Prohibition is not in itself an argument for or against a particular policy. The question of whether a particular policy is effective or desirable requires consideration of a range of factors, including the intended goals of the policy, the potential unintended consequences, and the feasibility of enforcing the policy. In the case of slavery, the moral imperative to end the practice was considered to outweigh the potential negative consequences of creating a black market for slaves.
It is said that women had no political power, but yet they were able to influence people to make an amendment banning alcohol.
It is true that women played a key role in the temperance movement and the push for prohibition in the United States. Women's suffrage and temperance were often linked, and suffrage advocates saw prohibition as a way to improve public morals and the home, as well as to protect women and children from the destructive effects of alcohol. Women were often at the forefront of the temperance movement, organizing rallies, protests, and other events to raise awareness and build support for prohibition. Women's groups such as the Women's Christian Temperance Union and the Anti-Saloon League were instrumental in the passage of the 18th Amendment, which banned the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcohol in the United States. However, it is important to note that women did not have political power at the time and were not able to vote or hold political office, so their influence was limited to the extent that they could sway public opinion and put pressure on elected officials.
So that proves you don't need the vote in order to enact change.
Yes, that's a good point. Women's efforts to bring about prohibition shows that even when a group is not able to directly participate in the political process, they can still have an impact and make their voices heard. Women's organizations like the Women's Christian Temperance Union and the Anti-Saloon League were able to use their collective influence to pressure lawmakers and sway public opinion in favor of prohibition. It is a good example of how social movements can affect change even without the right to vote.
Women could vote in states before the amendment was passed.
Yes, that's correct. While the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution granted women the right to vote in all elections in 1920. Women had already gained the right to vote in some states before that. For example, Wyoming granted women the right to vote in 1869, and other Western states followed suit in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. By the time the 19th Amendment was ratified, about 3/4 of the states had already extended the right to vote to women in some capacity.